There are many mistakes that Tupac made that did not have to be made. And many artists are not learning from his mistakes because over the years, more and more rappers have died. And it's because there was a flaw. There was always some major flaw that kind of led to their demise. Back in the day, back when Tupac died, no one really even knew where to turn because, of course, Suge Knight wasn't a suspect, but there were other names that didn't turn up for years. And they're not invincible because there's always somebody that can help you get to that person. We're better than you. We can out-top you. We can kill you.
The East Coast, West Coast thing became a thing because they put it on record and publicly embarrassed other guys. And so they want to feel like they're protected and they're able to provide protection and step up according to their code and handle certain things. And the East Coast, West Coast thing, I hated it. I mean, I just hated it, man, because to me, it's exactly what a colonizer would want to see us doing. Is killing each other, you know? And so we would talk about that all the time, and that's good in a room, like we're in a room talking, but when you go outside, the other guy didn't hear that conversation, and he's carrying. He's strapped, he's looking for you because he wants the reputation of putting one in you.
My time now, baby. I'm about to take it to a whole nother level. Hey, I'm feeling good, feeling great. Hey, now I'm ready to leave. Time to take off. Time to take off. Time to take off. Time. I'm ready to go. Time to take off. Time to take off. Time to take off. I'm ready to go.
Now it's Saturday, the 7th of September in the morning. Pac is on his way from LA, and Kevin Hackey had my Nextel two-way cell phone radio that should have been given to me when I arrived in Vegas.
So the Secret Service, who understands probably better than anyone how critical communications is, talks about it as basically they would stop a movement and put the person back in a protective bubble or a lockdown bunker type area if they even started having poor communications.
Well, Reggie was upset about that. He was saying, effing Kevin Hackey, blah, blah, blah.
I was Los Angeles County jail booking in a burglary suspect. I went to work that day. I had arrested someone early on that day, a burglary suspect. During the apprehension of the arrest, the suspect was injured. So I had to transport him to Los Angeles County General Hospital. And anytime you book in a suspect that's injured, there has to be medical clearance. And that's where I was down there.
Now, I have not heard yet about the gun problem. I just learned I wasn't going to have a radio, and it seemed like Reggie wasn't going to do anything about it. I was just stuck with no radio.
Each guy has 2 radios, 4 batteries, and 2 different mic setups, so he can just swap out himself.
The night of September 7th is another example of chaos at the label. It's fight night, Vegas. Tupac makes the entrance song for Mike Tyson the day before in California. You have engineers rushing from California the day of to Vegas to get the DAT tape there. So much to the extent that Damon Thomas wrecks a luxury car on the way to Vegas.
Right after we had that security meeting, we met at a TGI Fridays for lunch. And I'm asking myself how this is gonna work. I mean, I don't have a radio. Now I don't have a gun either. And Michael Moore made the, biggest, hoorah about the weapons.
I was told to go to 662 that afternoon and that I should not be bodyguarding Tupac at all, that Frank Alexander was going to pick him up, and that I was not to be with him at all.
Why would you just have Frank with him when you got all these other cops?
I was a little upset that I was taken off of him, and I got into a little argument with Reggie Wright at lunch over it. He said, Mike, I'm putting Frank back on him, and I'm taking you back off. And I said, Reggie, that part doesn't make sense. Why not leave me and Frank on Tupac?
This is their #1 artist. I mean, he's as high profile as they get. You know, and you're paying for all the security. I mean, you got all these guys at the club.
And he said, Michael Moore, do what you're told. I'm going to put you at Club 662, and you're going to handle the security along with Al Giddens at the club. And then I said, Reggie, that doesn't make sense.
In the military, they call it an illegal order. It's the only order you never have to follow is an illegal order. You have an obligation, a duty, honor, duty, country, self, to not follow an illegal order. What they gave those guys was an illegal order, directly placing his life in danger. If they would have gone to him as a group and threatened to quit, he probably would have kept him, and he'd probably still be alive right now.
Earlier that evening, after the meeting at the attorney's office, Reggie said, hey, Pac is back at the Lexor. I'm going to go drop you off, go meet up with him. So he dropped me off. I saw Pac and all of the outlaws and went over, hugged him, greeted him and everything. And, Pac said, hey, Big Frank, how was your vacation, man? I was like, it's cool, man, So he had been gambling. He was actually shooting craps at the Lexor. And, Pac is Pac. He said, hey, let's go. And we go, where are we going? He goes, we're going to go over to the MGM. And I'm like, well, are we going to get a cab or how are we going to get over there? He goes, no, we're going to walk over there.
At that time, I was really instructed not to be on Tupac. The time that you see me between the MGM Grand and you see me at the Lexor, I'm actually doing that on my own. I am really not supposed to be there because that lunch, prior to that, while at lunch, I was instructed to be strictly at 662. So what I did is I seen Tupac roaming around with Frank, and I just, on my own, went in and decided to help out as best I could prior to that.
So Michael Moore, myself, and all of the outlaws with Tupac walk from the Lexor to the MGM. We get to the MGM, again, he goes to a crap table, and the MGM was a little bit, more crowded that evening while he was gambling. He was gambling, he was, winning, he was doing good. And Pac said to me, go over, call Reggie, and find out what time Suge wants to meet to go into the fight. Tupac asked me to go make the call. I didn't have a radio, I couldn't contact Reggie, so I had to go to a landline phone to call over to where Reggie was at.
Reggie did something that he's never done. He's never stayed at 662. That day, he stayed at the club. Then why would he need me there? And why would I be taken off of Tupac?
If your go-to excuse as the head of security for a record label is that we forgot our radios and no one told me, what kind of supervisor are you?
You put Tupac at risk when you remove one bodyguard and say, hey, Frank, you handle it.
When he was in a casino gambling around his table, it's like if you're in Las Vegas and someone's gambling and they're like a hot roller on the crap table, and all you hear is the screaming. You see the table's really full, and then you see all these people around because they're trying to see who's winning this money. This is in any situation in Las Vegas. Well, this particular, evening, Tupac is at the crap table. He's winning, and the crowd just started like from the front of the table, and it got like this, and it got like this, and it got like this, until the crowd was just big. It was enormous. Tupac asked me to find out what time we were going to go to the fight. Well, I didn't have a radio to call Reggie Wright, nor did Michael Moore have a radio to call Reggie Wright. So Pac asked me to go over to the payphone to call Reggie. I went over to call Reggie to find out what time we were going to go to the fight that night, Mike Tyson, Bruce Seldon fight. And by the time I got from hanging up the phone with Reggie, finding out the information, I go back to the same table that Pac was at, and he was gone. He wasn't there. He was gone. Him, the Outlaws, and Michael Moore, they were gone. And I'm walking all over the MGM looking for him, and I couldn't find him. So I couldn't call anywhere, so I walked back over to the Lexor by myself. I get back over there, I'm down on the floor looking for Tupac, the Outlaws, and Michael Moore.
Got impatient and he wanted to leave. So we left the MGM Grand and went back to the Lexor. Then I took Tupac all the way upstairs to his room and dropped him off. And then I went to my room, and that is how I left Tupac.
I got back over to the Lexor. I saw Pac walking around by himself.
Okay, first I do want to clear up, I didn't leave Tupac alone. During our conversation on the way back from the MGM Grand, I explained to Tupac that Mr. Wright was taking me off of earlier that day. And I walked him all the way to his room. And I explained he's a real impatient person. I walked him to his room, and my understanding was he was supposed to wait there till other security got to him. So I went to my room, and that was actually the last. I didn't have no knowledge he was downstairs in the lobby till I got a phone call from you saying, hey, why is Tupac down here? It was news to me.
Who is you?
Frank Alexander called me and said, hey, Mike, why is Tupac down here? To me, when he got to his room, I was basically done with Tupac as far as that.
So I called Michael Moore on the house phone and said, hey, get back down here because Pac is, getting ready to want to, take off and everything. And he's upset about Reggie. Have you talked to Reggie? And Michael said, no, I haven't talked to Reggie at this particular point. Okay. So when Michael Moore got back downstairs, he met us. I told him where we were at. He came back downstairs.
Well, he instructed me to do something first. He got a little upset because now that I think back on it, he said he's paying for and that he is telling us where we're going.
And Pac said, Frank, go upstairs, change clothes, and I'm going to go with you, change clothes. Michael Moore, you stay with me while Frank changes.
I remember him saying that real loud that day in the lobby, that I'm paying for you, you go where I say go. And then I said, Frank, you need to make a phone call to Reggie. We had an issue with our clothes. Me and Frank had on short pants that day. We needed to change our clothes to get in the right clothes for the fight. But there was some problems there because with me not really being on Tupac, the person who really needed to change his clothes was Frank. So we let Frank go change his clothes while I waited.
So I was going to go back after changing downstairs to meet Pac. Pac had already changed. Michael Moore had to go change clothes.
Then Frank changed his clothes, came back and picked up on Pac.
And Pac said, Michael, come over to the MGM and meet us over there by the Grand Arena, entrance.
And then I went back to my room.
Well, in between this time, Pac and I caught a cab and went over to the MGM. While we were at the MGM out in the arena right there waiting to go in, so I had the MGM security walk us behind and walk us around. And we're waiting for Michael Moore to show up. At that point in time, I had lost all communication with Michael Moore. I didn't know whether he was coming, what was going on or anything.
Because we were at the Lexor, and that's where I had my room was at. When I got dressed, I had no idea where they were at. There again, our communications we didn't have together. Normally, Frank and I would both have radios, and Frank could just say, hey, Mike, we're over here. There was no radio again. That day, Frank doesn't have a radio. I don't have a radio, which I normally have, and we have confusion. To this day, I believe that Tupac was under the impression that I was going to be going to the MGM Grand with him. But that wasn't the case. When I went to my room, I knew in my heart I wasn't coming back because I had been instructed to go to Club 662.
Pac was real antsy. He was like, where's Suge? Where's Suge? How come Suge ain't here? He's looking at the time and stuff, and it's getting closer for the fight to start at this point. People are going in.
Tupac even called Reggie and had Frank get in touch with Reggie to find out where Michael Moore was at. So the problem was festering, and I knew something wasn't right.
Now, remember, I had already called Reggie and let him know that Pac was expecting Michael Moore to be with us. So Reggie knew there was confusion. I even saw people from California that knew me that came up to me and started talking to me.
Mr. Wright knew that I was pretty stubborn, and he basically knew that I wouldn't take my weapon off. So they kept checking to see where I was at. Well, if Mr. Wright told me to show up at the club at 10 o'clock, why did he start calling my room at 8? That's 2 hours. I think there was a reason for that.
And we were just waiting.
One phone call came from Al Giddens, who was also head of 662 security. And I asked him, I go, Al, why are you calling my room at 10 after 8 if I'm not supposed to be there at 10? And his answer was, Reggie just called me and told me to call you. I said, well, don't call me no more. And then after that, all my phone calls came directly from Mr. Wright. So 3 of the phone calls came from Mr. Wright, and 1 phone call came from Al Giddens.
Suge got there with a couple of people that was with him, whoever it was that had the tickets, and we went in to the fight right as the national anthem was playing.
So when I went to my hotel room, I told Tim Williams, something is not right here, Tim. What we have to do is find out what's going on. So I said, let me go downstairs and I'll change clothes and I'll work with Tupac until Reggie says something. Tim said, Mike, don't do it. He goes, you're going to piss Reggie off. Don't do it. I go, Tim, Frank's going to need some help. He said, don't do it. Just get dressed and go to the club. Well, we got down to the MGM right in the front of it, right where was at. And I was getting ready to get out of the car. I rode with Tim Williams over there. He goes, Mike, what are you doing? I said, Tim, I should just get out. Because if Reggie yells at me and I'm covering Tupac, how bad can that be? Well, at the last second, I decided to just stay in the car. I went to Club 662. And then when I look back at all the events that took place, I'm more to believe that we had something to do with Tupac's death.
Mike Tyson gets in the ring, knocks Bruce Seldon out in like 50 seconds or something like that.
Gambling, you can always punch, and that's it. It's over in the first round.
Yeah. Tyson was Pac's homeboy, and to see Tyson in the ring doing his thing, whooping up on Bruce Seldon, Pac was excited. He was jumping up and he was saying what he was saying. Everybody getting excited about a fight, and that continued from the seats into the back of the area where the boxers come back in at after the fight is over. And he, got back there and he's just going off, man, 50 blows, 50, man, he knocked them out, 50 blows, blah, blah, blah. That was it. After the Seldon fight, Suge wanted to go ahead and leave, and Pac was ready to go, obviously, as well. So we walk out of the back area. Mike Tyson never came in the back, so we never met up with Mike. We ended up leaving. As we left out of the fight arena area, as we got out into the casino area again, one of Suge's guys, his name is Trevon, came over and whispered in Tupac's right ear, because I was standing on Tupac's left. Tupac took off and ran as I took off behind him, and the rest of the entourage is behind me. Tupac comes to, at this time, I didn't know who it was, now being Orlando Anderson, standing by this planter, just like waiting. And Pac just ran up on him, and then Orlando Anderson swung back. At this time, Pac's medallion broke. When he reached out and grabbed the medallion, I grabbed him and got him out of the fight. By the time the entourage who was behind me had gotten there, the footage that is from the MGM everyone sees, Orlando Anderson's on the ground and everybody's kicking at him, beating him down or whatever. That's what took place right after we walked out of the fight. Orlando Anderson was standing in an elevator lobby by this tree. You can't see him from the main casino on account that there are walls all over the elevator lobby. So when we met Trayvon and the rest of the group, I had no idea how on a crowded casino floor they saw this guy. Now, I never knew who Orlando Anderson was. It's just like kind of, funny, ironic, whatever you want to call it. Orlando Anderson wasn't staying at the MGM, so I don't know why he was where he was, because I knew the way through the MGM because I was in the MGM walking around earlier looking for everyone. I knew how to walk us out of the MGM to the entrance. And I walked us out of the entrance. As the tape shows, I'm in front, Pac and Suge, and everybody is following me now. It took us about an hour and a half to get to Shug's house, but we only stayed at his house for a few minutes.
Vegas police were actually hired to be gate guards at the community night, had a home in. They noted that 15 cars were in the caravan.
As I walked over to the car, Tupac handed me the keys and said, no, go drive the Lexus, the little homies, because we're gonna be over at the club partying and you're gonna be the designated driver, so you go drive with them. We always followed the artists because most artists are felons that was with the record label. They had cases. They had some type of legal pending things going on. And we as security didn't want to be caught up and mixed up in any incidents that could possibly have happened with them while they were behind the wheel driving.
About 15 minutes before.
15 minutes prior, was he panicked?
Yes, he was nervous. He was, I have never seen, I've been on a street situation when we were police officers with Reggie. I mean, looking for armed suspects. I mean, and he's never been this nervous before.
Okay.
It's about 9 miles up the strip from Suge Knight's house to the location where the shooting happened. That's 45 minutes worth of travel at approximately 12 miles an hour to get to the location where the shooting happened.
When I saw the white Cadillac pulling up to Tupac and Suge, you know, I mean, it was no different than any other car that was gonna come up to a red light and, stop. Only thing different about the Cadillac pulling up is that I noticed that it was getting a little bit closer to the car. No alarm, because there was, other cars pulling up to him and, Tupac, the groupie kind of situation. And the arm came out, fired into the BMW, and myself and the 3 outlaws that was in the car with me, we were just... It looked as if everything was in slow motion. I mean, as clear as me sitting here right now talking about it, my memory will always remember. And the way I visioned it was in slow motion. And myself and the 3 outlaws that was in the car with me, we are just in awe. There's absolutely no way I thought that car was moving, because with all of the rounds that went through that car, they were dead. When I saw the white Cadillac pulling up to Tupac and Suge, you know, I mean, it was no different than any other car that was gonna come up to a red light. And from my point of view, all I could see was the arm coming out. K-Dub and Trayvon, who were in front of the BMW, took off, and I ran up to the back of the BMW. As I was approaching the BMW, as I got about to the trunk, the car did a U-turn.
While I was working at 662, I heard something over the Nextels that we all carry for security. And what I heard was, got him. The voice was definitely one of our, not paid security, but one of security that works with directly for Mr. Knight, came over the radio. Now, I couldn't pinpoint exactly whose voice it was, but it was some voice that I had heard before. So I knew it was one of our, not one of our direct security that was hired with us, but one of the, what would we call them? What would we call those? One of the homeboy securities. You said, got him, right before me and Mr. Wright got in the vehicle to go get to the hospital. But at the same time he said that, he said, then someone else came on the radio and said, hey, don't say nothing over the radio, which was the Nextels we were using radio to radio.
Okay, that voice, they say, don't say anything over the radio. Did you recognize that voice by chance?
No, because at the time, Mr. Wright and I were talking about what had happened, and I just clearly heard somebody say, don't say that over the radio. But the person who said it was not homeboy security, nor was it one of our security guards. It was, to me, it would be like a stranger. Someone, and the person that said that was Caucasian.
Within minutes of the shooting, Reggie Wright Jr. states that he caught a ride to the hospital with attorney George Kalisis. I wonder if during that time the attorney told him what his problems could be.
Of course he did. And it's probably why Wright Jr. was already calling his dad in Compton. He tells his dad two things: a Southside Crip got beat up and Tupac and Knight have been shot.
It's interesting to me to see how this narrative evolved very quickly and how that narrative continued to evolve over time.
Right after he's off the phone with Junior, Senior calls Tim Brennan.
There was a police officer by the name of Tim Brennan with the Compton Police Department. Tim Brennan was the author of the narrative that there was a gang involved and that Orlando Anderson was, in fact, the shooter of Tupac Shakur.
Brennan said the main suspect was a guy, Orlando Anderson, who had been beat up earlier that night by Tupac. Apparently, the beating was payback for Anderson, stealing a chain from some death row guy named Trayvon Lane.
Everyone wants to talk about this chain snatch. It's actually a pendant. So how important is the pendant story?
So, I mean, in my opinion, it was Orlando Anderson. You know, there's no doubt, because he's the one that got beat down. So
it is said that Trayvon Lane told Tupac that Orlando Anderson snatched his chain and kept it, and many people think that this is true. In fact, author Kathy Scott, who's revised her book like 3 times already, to this day is still repeating that narrative. We don't know exactly what was said to Tupac, but what we do know is Compton police officers Robert Ladd and Tim Brennan wrote in their 2017 book that the chain was never stolen. It had simply fell off and it had been recovered.
The official story at first was that no one knew who Orlando Anderson was.
So let me get this straight. Trayvon Lane, a gang guy, gets attacked by another gang guy, Orlando Anderson. 5 months go by, and no one tells him who does it. But Trayvon Lane knows who Orlando Anderson is.
This is no different than any small town. These guys all know each other.
Trayvon Lane knew exactly who Orlando Anderson was and exactly what he looked like. You know who else did? Robert Ladd, Tim Brennan, and Reggie Wright Sr.
Orlando Anderson didn't just have a history with Trayvon Lane. He had one with Brennan and Ladd. Ladd says Anderson tried to shoot him while they were eating lunch. And because of the past incident, you have to ask if it was all that gang retaliation narrative or it was a guy they didn't like who got beat up.
Why are they telling me what they tell me? Do they have a motive? Is there some reason why they're doing this? Because, I mean, it may be something other than the truth. It may, they don't like him, or they don't like the individual, or they got something against the individual, or somebody told them, I need you to pin this guy.
So they say he's their shooter and it's all about payback, but payback for what? That's where the death row pendant comes in.
Now let me tell you how important this pendant is to the entire narrative. It was so important that Robert Ladd perjured himself in grand jury testimony over it. In fact, one juror actually pinned him down on it, and he had to recant his earlier testimony. I wonder if that juror read his book and saw the contradiction.
But you see, the chain snatch narrative wasn't quite cooked yet.
So they approach Frank Alexander to tell a lie. They ask him to repeat a narrative that the chain was stolen earlier that day, not months before. But what's interesting to track is that even a year later, that narrative about the chain being stolen that day still persists. In fact, Suge Knight told Vibe magazine a year after the event happened that the chain had been snatched earlier that day. Nothing about the Lakewood Mall, nothing about an event that happened months earlier. This was an event that was supposed to have happened that day.
So Reggie mind started thinking, because Reggie knows law. He's a hell of a cop. Like, wait a minute. Pop was going to try to arrest or place a citizen arrest on a guy that attempted to steal his chain.
And again, that first night, I don't think he was totally forthcoming on everything he knew.
Through all of my research, I've never gotten anyone to verify any chain snatch story.
With me, I was like, okay, so he was trying to arrest the dude that was attempted to take his chain. Because y'all remember, Pac's chain broke during the melee. But the reason that I told Frank bitch ass to tell that story was to save Pac, or to give a defense. It probably wouldn't have saved Pac, to be honest, but give him a defense.
That's all well and good, but the second time Reggie asked Frank to lie, Tupac was dead.
Yeah, witness tampering is trying to influence a testimony that a witness may give by any means that you can use to influence them. It could be money, it could be threats. The idea of tampering is there's a witness and you're trying to influence what they're going to say.
Every time I think it's over, they drag me right back in again.
And later on, when Frank Alexander is asked to repeat that story again, he refuses.
We were supposed to went down to Vegas, me, you, and Malcolm, because Malcolm can ID the person. We were supposed to send you and him down to ID, to see if we could look at the pictures, because they had a suspect, and that's when they had Orlando as a suspect. And then they were going to just have y'all look at the pictures before then, just to see if maybe that, made your memory get better or whatever. So you can describe somebody, but once you see a picture, oh yeah, that's him. And so that's what they were going to have you to do. And that's what David told them, that we got two witnesses that, maybe can help you out and put some things in the light. And plus the statement that you gave about the chain and all of that, with the additional information.
But when Frank Alexander refuses to tell the lie that the chain was snatched that day, we see that the story begins to evolve a little bit from that the chain was stolen that day to that an event happened several months earlier and a chain was taken.
Was there a chain snatch at the Lakewood Mall? Where's the security tapes? Where's the police report? We all know it didn't happen that night.
His head of security is a ex-Compton police officer. It's suspected that you have Compton gang members who came up there to do shooting, gangland-style shooting, and yet and still, who's heading up the investigation? You have a lieutenant from Compton Police. This whole thing, it smells from high hell.
So I want to talk about false flag operation because that's what I see happening here.
So the definition of a false flag operation is where a group that is actually responsible for an event under the false flag is going to say that a second group came in and actually was responsible.
And so that's usually what when people talk about false flag operations, they're usually talking about things that are not necessarily true, but you hold it up as a flag that becomes a rationale for doing something else, but the flag you're holding up is based on false information, false premises.
Over the next 48 hours, Vegas PD are trying to make sense of a killing they do not understand.
But you could also say, you're gaslighting, that they're all the same sort of things where you're giving a narrative of something that's not true to justify taking some action.
Because this is the first time I ever dealt with any kind of music industry case like this, and it was a learning curve for me as far as how everything was done, and it was very, very confusing to me how things were kind of just done haphazardly.
And because no one in the shooting is from Vegas, detectives are at a loss as to how to start the interview process.
So we have to depend on people that we know we can get in touch with to try and reach out to them.
Yeah, we went into Iraq because of what had happened on 9/11 when the towers were taken down. And so there was this Saddam Hussein is available and harboring terrorists and stuff. That's a false flag because he wasn't and he didn't. And the people who flew the planes that took down, the World Trade Center, they were from Saudi Arabia. They were from Iraq.
I think this was Vegas' first big mistake. Death Row was already being investigated by both local and federal agencies. And in fact, the security guys themselves were under investigation for a murder that happened some months earlier. It seems like any information coming from the Compton guys might have been looked at as tainted, and I think maybe the early investigators were skeptical. That's why things move so slow. But Compton PD was not entering the conversation as potentially conflicted informants. They were saying, hey guys, we're cops and ex-cops, to garner that trust. And the badge was their false flag.
Well, I think when you have information like that, that information is power. And you got to understand at this time, Reggie's already manipulating things or kind of positioning himself to, he's not only already in a good position with Death Row Records, but he's got higher aspirations at Death Row Records. And I think Reggie, he's not the smartest guy in the room, but he's got enough connections and enough people around him where he can make, I think, decisions that are in his best interest, but not maybe everybody else's best interest. And he's starting to pull strings there. And as long as Death Row people and LAPD people have control of this Tupac murder and Las Vegas PD does not, that sits just fine with them.
Violence erupts in the city of Compton. In what they are now calling the 10-day war, local police officials there are alleging the shootings, which led to some 3 deaths, are somehow tied to the recent shooting of rapper Tupac Shakur in Las Vegas days earlier. More on the 11 o'clock news, so stay tuned.
Well, even though Reggie Sr. said it was, quote, coming back to Compton, unquote, there didn't seem to be any rush for payback. Nothing happened for the next 36 hours. It's all about the timing. While Death Row keeps Las Vegas on the Compton narrative merry-go-round, some unnamed, quote-unquote, executive is already leaking the gang narrative to the LA Times. This drops in less than 24 hours, so the Times is getting the news something like 18 hours after the shooting. No one's even close to knowing what happened, and yet the streets stay quiet for 15 hours.
The compelling thing about the Orlando Anderson story is he gets a beat down, immediately retaliates, killing Tupac Shakur. Now, by contrast, it takes a full 36 hours for anyone to retaliate for the shooting of Tupac. So who gets shot? Some random guy named Darnell Brim. What does this have to do with the Tupac shooting? Sure, he's a gang guy. Well, gang guys get shot in Compton all the time. It's as common as a weekday ending in Y.
And for about 10 days, 10 more people are shot and 3 are killed. This is what they were calling a war, but was it really a war?
You know, so obviously from a law enforcement agency looking into this, I mean, all of a sudden there's war in Compton. I mean, you know, basic calls are made, you know.
In 1996, Compton PD, by their own numbers, reported an average of 6 killings a month. And this number is down from the years prior of 94, 95. In this alleged gang retaliation, we're talking about 3 killings in 10 days. To reiterate, 3 killings in 10 days does not constitute a gang war.
Working South Bureau homicide when Russ Poole was there and I was there, it was a record break. I had 325 murders in 1 year.
And it came to the point where Compton had to do something. Detective Tim Brennan lays the entire Orlando Anderson narrative down at the feet of the Las Vegas Police Department based on the word of some random confidential informants, and we have no idea who these people are.
But was Brennan's affidavit actually true? Or was he trying to make the picture fit the frame?
Brennan knows you're not going to mobilize an army to get Orlando Anderson by himself, so they have to broaden the blame so it looks like a bigger problem.
Oh, yeah. People, you know, embellish in search warrants to get it, you know, so they can get it. It's not, you know, in my experience, it wasn't something that was widely done, but there were times that you'd hear about it was done.
So who are they going to blame? They're going to blame somebody else. But who? In a hurry? They're going to have to come up with something quick. So what they decide to do is to blame someone that can't really be identified. They're going to name some collective. They're going to name some group. They're going to name some gang.
That's what Tim Brennan told me personally. He said, whenever they're ready, tell them that when they're ready to know who did it and who was in the car and all that stuff, tell them we have the evidence. We know who did it. We know exactly who was in that car that night. And he's basically saying, and I don't want to start dissension between 2 different departments, but he said, well,
it's funny because everything we had came from Tim Brennan.
And they had to get a search warrant, and they couldn't come up with, you know, the probable cause for it. So sometimes it was embellished or, made up.
You have to understand the absurdity of this. The entire reason the narrative was created and drafted in the application for the search warrant the way that it was for one reason and one reason only, and that was to get the attention and the buy-in of the judge who would sign off on it.
Is there some reason why they're doing this? Because, I mean, it may be something other than the truth.
And if your narrative to a judge is, well, we don't really know who did it, and nobody really saw who did it, it may or may not have been gang-related, and it may or may not have been related to some chain snatch that happened in the past, and we're really just not sure of any of our facts, the likelihood that you're going to get a judge to sign off on this thing is nil.
Cops do it all the time.
No witness to the Tupac shooting or any witness to the MGM event ever said that Tupac said anything to Orlando Anderson, especially the line, "Are you from the South?" Are you from the South? Meaning, are you a South Side Crip?
Well, if all your facts are based upon the opinion or assumptions of other individuals and you have no confirmation of that by other witnesses, then you're going to go back and you're going to put your affidavit together and you say, I am swearing to these truths that were given to me. And these truths may not be truths. They're only opinions and assumptions.
And if somebody would have gotten out of the shooter vehicle, walked around the shooter vehicle to the passenger side of the BMW and started talking shit prior to actually shooting into the vehicle, you don't think that would have given enough time for the security guard parked directly behind the BMW to himself get out of the vehicle and approach the man talking before the man had a chance to open fire?
The detective that is getting the information must be able to confirm or to have other evidentiary value to verify them as truths.
In my era, if I was caught in lying, it would have been the end of my career. I would have been fired.
It began before dawn. The crime suite involved 300 officers, 10 agencies, including the FBI, at more than 37 locations in the Compton, Linwood, and Long Beach areas.
Based on the affidavit and the search warrant of Tim Brennan, they go ahead and they do this big gang sweep. Looking all over the city of Compton for Orlando Anderson, a city of over 10 square miles with tens of thousands of houses. But who finds Orlando Anderson? You guessed it, Tim Brennan.
Of course, during the affidavit, I chased him into a house and we recovered some guns out of that house.
So Tim Brennan and his buddies get Orlando Anderson in cuffs and get him in front of Vegas PD. Vegas PD takes one look at him, and what do? They walk away.
I just don't see the interest.
Tim Brennan and his Compton buddies can't figure out for the life of them what's going on. I mean, they're delivering this thing to Vegas on a silver platter, but Vegas just isn't buying it.
Landing before say that, well, we treat it like every other case, that he doesn't get any special treatment because he is a celebrity, but, you know, I don't know if I buy all that.
You need to understand that there actually was an arrest made for the murder of Tupac Shakur. The arrest was made by Officer Tim Brennan of the Compton Police Department, and he arrested Orlando Anderson for the murder.
You know, I know the people they need to talk to solve it.
So now the rhetoric starts. Vegas PD is incompetent. Brett Becker's incompetent. Kevin Manning's incompetent. Everybody's incompetent.
That everybody said that we didn't do anything, they're so out in left field, they're ridiculous. You know, and that's that. I had some problems between Las Vegas and me because they don't, you know, like what I've said. Right. But, you know, I speak the truth.
Brennan's own department doesn't even believe Brennan's link between the shootings in Compton and the Tupac shooting. So Brennan gets a warrant based on zero evidence and filled with inaccuracies. Now watch how fast this guy, Roller, walks back everything he told the Times 15 days before.
Our investigation revealed that some of the motivation for the shootings that occurred in Compton may be in retaliation for the events that transpired in Las Vegas.
In the death row organization, Crips and Bloods working together was no secret. In fact, they worked together frequently in the studio because they were there to work. But on the day that Tim Brennan swore out in his search warrant affidavit there was some war and Bloods and Crips were openly killing each other in the streets, 10 Los Angeles police officers surrounded the Can-Am studios and had to forcefully evict both Crips and Bloods that were working together. One of the interesting things about it was that some of the Crips were actually East Coast Crips from New Jersey. So you have East Coast Crips working together with West Coast Bloods. And that doesn't seem to be very much of a gang war, does it?
So, quote unquote, you know, alleged Crip members, whatever, were killed left and right. But from Las Vegas standpoint, I mean, the whole thing smells.
It's easy to overlook a couple of key facts that need to be called out because of their terrible optics. For example, people forget that Tim Brennan and Robert Ladd and their gang detail were being directly supervised by Reginald Wright Sr.
Lawyers, as I said, are held to a high standard, and we're trained to recognize conflicts and potential conflicts. And it doesn't take a law book or a law professor to tell you what a conflict of interest is. They're pretty easily recognizable and kind of common sense.
They also forget that Brennan and Ladd's employer, the Compton PD, was shut down in its entirety.
We didn't go to the feds. We didn't go to the sheriff's department to tell them or let them know if there was some wrongdoing within the Compton Police Department. They came to us that wanted to talk to us about some things they're getting on some wiretaps about Reggie Wright, about Junie, about the gang unit. But as other investigations rolled with that we were involved in with the FBI, you know, their names popped up. You know, like the gang unit, Ladd, Brennan, Aguirre, Richardson. We had met with them, not once, a few times. So that's why I say, I hope he wasn't doing something back then.
An entire police department was shut down due to corruption allegations.
I think in order to disband an entire police department, things have to be so bad and so corrupt that there's no other alternative, such as maybe bringing in a new police chief, new police administration, or something of that nature. The bottom line is things have to be pretty bad before that happens. In police work, in law enforcement, there is so much duplication of services. They overlap.
I had personal interaction with them working the gang detail from 84 to 90. We didn't share a lot of information with them because of the city government was known to be corrupt, and the police department had a stigma of not being on the up and up.
But before that happened, and what most people don't know, is that Tim Brennan was also trying to push Orlando Anderson on the LAPD for the Biggie Smalls killing.
Yeah, we got this guy Anderson, but Vegas isn't buying him as a suspect. That's okay. We'll just pin him for something else.